This video features the best brawlers you need to be playing in March 2024. With the new season and the new brawler, let's see how much the meta has shifted so far. Alright guys, the first brawler we're going to be talking about for this video is going to shock the world, is going to be BB. Now BB actually has one of the shortest attack ranges out of all the brawlers in the entire game. That is what made her struggle in the meta for such a long time. However, something that's going to help her out going forward is her brand new hypercharge out of bounds. When activated, BB super splits into two large bubbles that deals the same amount of damage. She also gains a 25% shield boost, a 24% speed boost, as well as a 5% damage boost. Now when using her hypercharge, it's very important to try to really focus as much as you guys can to try and actually connect with your hypercharge super. It will also be helpful if you try to aim it towards as many walls as possible to try and have it bounce and hit the enemies multiple times. This will just help the bubblegum balls to just multiply and duplicate like insanely quickly, and who knows, it may help you guys get an unexpected kill. Now yes, even though BB's hypercharge is going to help her out in the meta a lot more, now something that is helpful with her is her home run bar. I mean, BB's ability to just knock back enemies when her home run bar is charged can be useful to just avoid contact from short range brawlers. This will just allow you to escape and just stop dangerous attacks and supers before they fully execute. Now yes, even though it's going to be helpful to like knock back those high bursting short range brawlers, it can work to your disadvantage against like very good mid range brawlers. Especially for those medium to long range brawlers who can still hit BB from that greater distance, and it's especially dangerous to you for certain brawlers that deal more damage in mid to long range. So to kind of avoid like knocking back those very strong mid to long range brawlers and that are going to be outranging BB, there is a specific strategy that you can use with her home run bar. You can deliberately discard your knockback from a charged home run bar by swinging BB's bat prematurely if your next main attack is to only attack enemies which you don't want to knock back. This can be helpful when you're chasing down the enemies and you don't want to knock them back even farther from you, and you can just keep on attacking and dealing damage if they are within that close distance. As something that you can even do as well, like to prevent a target from escaping, you can use her home run knockback to knock the enemy like into a nearby wall and then go up to them and then just go and beat them to death. Overall, I know this is going to be a very controversial pick, and I know a lot of you keyboard warriors are going to go into the comments saying, Bren, you're kind of stupid. Well, how is BB a top brawler? But realistically, your hypercharge, who knows? I think it's going to really help her inside of this meta. Alright guys, the next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Charlie. Now hold on, before everybody starts rioting in the comments saying, Bren, Charlie got a ton of nerfs, how is she still in the top brawlers for this video? Like, okay, let me just go over those nerfs first off. For her nerfs, like Charlie's super projectile speed was decreased by 27%. Charlie's pestilence hypercharge damage boost was decreased from 30% to 25%. Charlie's pestilence hypercharge speed boost was decreased from 30% to 26%. And also Charlie's pestilence hypercharge shield boost was decreased from 10% to 5%. But Charlie's pestilence hypercharge rate was increased by 50%, which is actually a buff. So yes, going back to what I said earlier, like how is Charlie still a top brawler? It's because of her super. I mean, that just makes her so good and so annoying to deal with. I mean, come on, being able to shut down any aggressive brawler or just any brawler in general and keeping them in that cocoon just completely prohibits them from doing anything throughout the match. Now another thing that's actually helpful in Charlie's kit, even though it's getting a lot of nerfs as well, is her spider's gadget. Because if you notice that the enemies are trying to hide inside of bushes to surprise you or just heal up in general, you can use this gadget to have the spider scout the bushes for you. Now another good thing about Charlie's kit is that she has a pretty long main attack range, which can be helpful to just chip enemies away from a distance. However, it can be more high risk because the farther that you shoot your yo-yo, the longer it takes to return back to you. So with this kind of thing in mind, you don't want to be auto-aiming your attacks unless your range outranges the enemy that you are trying to attack. You need to be as efficient as possible since you need to wait for the yo-yo to return in order to attack again. Now to kind of go another step further, when using her main attack, you can actually try to practice peek shooting with Charlie. In order to peek shoot, just peek out from behind a wall and use your attack. After that, you just run back behind cover to ensure your own safety. Also, if there are enemies between yourself and the yo-yo, they could possibly get hit on the yo-yo's way back to Charlie. Overall, I know Charlie's still going to be a very controversial brawler, being in the top brawlers list, but realistically her super being able to shut down brawlers like any given time, I mean, it's just such a strong mechanic in the game. Alright guys, the next brawler I'm going to be talking about, welcome back, Otis. Now Otis hasn't made an appearance in one of my top brawlers videos in such a long time now, but he's finally returned, all because of the recent buffs that he got. One of the buffs that Otis actually received was that his main attack damage was increased from 440 to 460 per ink drop, and the other buff that he got was that his fast splatter gadget damage was increased from 880 to 920 per second. That was great and all that his main attack got buffed and his fast splatter gadget got buffed as well, but the main reason why he's so good is because of his super. I mean, Otis's super can just help him escape from tanks, assassins, if they just get too close to him. I mean, mean, Otis' super is probably one of the best throughout the entire game because being able to just mute them and get that guaranteed damage and possibly get a kill, I mean, you can't go wrong with having them not being able to attack whatsoever. Now, a tip that I do want to give you guys when using Otis' super is never use it when you're out of ammo. The main reason being is because you need your ammo in order to burst down the enemy when they are muted. What you need to be doing is use your super first and then use all of your ammo after. And also something to keep in mind is that his super's projectile speed is a bit slower compared to his main attack projectiles, so either you want to try to hit the enemies with your super from a closer range or really focus when aiming down the target. Now, going back to one of the buffs that I actually received, you know, his fat splatter gadget got a buff, but it's actually a very good gadget as well, and the one you need to be using because it's very helpful to like control a certain part of the map. Like, you can just block off choke points for 3.8 seconds and force the enemies to either take damage running over it, or they're going to be forced to wait until the ink puddle is gone if they don't want to take any damage. This is just going to be very helpful to place over choke points because if the enemies are very low on health and they know that they're going to probably die if they step on the ink puddle, it can be a great way to kind of just force them to stay back and help you and your team gain control of the map. Now, without a doubt, for Otis' star power, you have to be using ink refills because with the star power, I mean, it truly makes a difference by helping you deal more damage and getting down the enemies quicker when you have that extra ink drop per main attack. You may not think it's not that helpful, but if you have a maxed out Otis, you can actually end up doing an additional 920 damage per paint blob. And the last thing I want to talk about for Otis' build is, yes, you have to be getting the supercharged gear for him. I mean, having the supercharged gear would just help you chain your super that much faster, and you know, with Otis, his super is the most critical part to his kit, so making sure that you are chaining your super and getting it as much as possible is important to be successful whatsoever with Otis. Overall, Otis has probably been like an A tier brawler for a very long time now, but with the additional buffs that he's received, I definitely think he's going to be an S tier brawler going forward inside of March. Alright guys, the next brawler I'm going to be talking about is going to shock the world again. It's going to be Buzz. Now, in case you've been living under a rock and you don't know why Buzz is like in the top list right now, it's all because of his hypercharge. With his hypercharge Buzz watch, when it's activated, Buzz's super recharges instantly when he hits a wall. He also gains a 25% speed boost, a 15% damage boost, and a 15% shield boost. I mean, with this hypercharge, it just makes the damage easier for Buzz to be able to travel across the map and get to the objective or choke point wherever he needs to get to. Now, I know what you guys are saying, like, Brent, it's not as good as it used to be pre-nerf, like you could just instantly stun the enemies like non-stop, but you can still stun the enemies if you are hitting a nearby wall. As long as you guys are hitting a nearby wall where the enemies are, you are gonna still be getting your super instantly, and you can just keep on chaining and cycling supers to forever stun the enemy. Now, one of the junker things about Buzz is like his shots kind of stray from left to right, so it's kind of hard to hit. So in order to hit all of Buzz's 5 attacks, you have to be attacking from a point blank range. Now yes, Buzz's super is gonna be helpful, you know, when he's hypercharged and acting like he's Spider-Man out there, but it's also gonna be helpful to like chase down the enemies that are trying to run away from you. If an enemy is fleeing and is out of Buzz's range, he can use his super to quickly catch up to the enemy and stun them. Now, a very common mistake I see a lot of amateur Buzz players doing is that you're actually not immune when you're trying to grapple and move when using your super. So I really recommend trying not to use your super when you have a low amount of health. It's just overall too risky because he can still get bursted down while he's traveling to the enemy. Now, when using Buzz's super, I really recommend trying to take advantage of like his grapples, projectile, stun radius. Since Buzz's super stuns in a short radius around him once he finishes traveling to the buoy's location, it's better to grapple onto a wall near an enemy rather than grapple the enemy, since hitting Buzz's super on a moving target is difficult. And this tip kind of goes back to what I was talking about with his hypercharge. Like, if he at least hits a nearby wall, he can still stun the enemy, and it'll also just get him closer to that person that he's trying to track down. Now, I know throughout this section I've been talking about like Buzz using his super to try to track down the enemy and get closer to them, but you can actually use his reserve buoy gadget to kind of go and run away from the enemies if he's low. Buzz's reserve buoy gadget is effective for emergency situations such as escaping without having a super. It can also be used offensively by using it to catch up to the enemies faster, or by using it as a super at the beginning of a match. Overall, Buzz has been pretty mid in the meta, but you know, ever since him getting his hypercharge, kind of like BB, it has risen him to the top of the meta because he's literally turned into Spider Buzz. Alright guys, the next brawler I'm gonna go over is gonna be Pearl. Now, Pearl is another brawler kind of like Charlie, getting a ton of nerfs, so everybody's gonna probably be like, Brent, how is Pearl this high in the video? But okay, let me just go over recent nerfs and then I'll explain myself, okay? One of the nerfs that Pearl has gotten was that her health was decreased from 4200 to 3900. Also, Pearl's pyrolytic hypercharge speed boost was decreased from 30% to 26%, and also her pyrolytic hypercharge shield boost was decreased from 20% to 5%. But one of the buffs that she actually received was that her pyrolytic hypercharge damage boost was increased from 20% to 25%. Now, okay, I know this seems like a lot of nerfs to Pearl, but there is still some positives to her, and there's two main reasons why she's still very good right now. The first reason I'm gonna go over is her gadget Overcooked. The Overcooked gadget is still gonna to be useful, especially when she's hypercharged, to just deal that extra 60% damage that lasts for 3 seconds. It can come in very handy to kind of just deal that extra damage, and who knows, it might lower the enemies enough to the point where they just die from it. And also, when using her overcooked gadget, I recommend using it when you have as much heat bar charge up as possible. This will just max out the amount of burning damage that you can do per projectile, because yes, that actually does stack with the heat bar. Now, the second reason why Pro is still going to be a very good brawler despite all the nerfs is because of the buff to her movement speed that she got back in December. I mean, this just helps Pearl move quicker around the map and get closer to the enemies so she can use her super effectively. Now, when using her super, I really just recommend caution because there is a half-second delay with her super. So try to activate it a little bit earlier if you know that you're about to go aggro or if somebody else is going aggro onto you. And you know, same thing with like her overcooked gadget or even just her main attack in general. You want to try to charge up as much of your heat bar as possible before using your super. And especially if you're using it when she's hypercharged, you can pretty much just eliminate any brawler in the entire game if you have that heat bar charge up to the max. Now, when starting off the matches when playing Pro, I recommend starting off very slowly, letting your heat bar charge up, and then when it's maxed out, that's when you go aggro. Now, once your heat bar is charged up, you want to try to get as close as possible to the enemies when bursting them down, just kind of like Pam. Because the farther away that you are, the more sporadic that the cookies are being shot out, so you want to be as close as possible to hit as much projectiles that you can. But her main attack can also be useful to chip down the enemies from a distance. Because yes, even though you do the most amount of damage from a close range, you can still use her farther main attack range to just chip the enemies down from distance to help you charge up your super. Overall, even though Pro has been getting a ton of nerfs to her hypercharging, or her overcooked gadget is still good, she still has the buff to her movement speed, so all of those aspects right there is still a main reason why she's so good in the meta still. Alright guys, the next brawler I'm going to talk about is going to be Leon. Now, the main reason why Leon is such a good brawler right now is because of his hypercharge. I mean, the stat buffs that you receive that you can stack with his Invisible star power makes it so that you can still move quickly but also heal up at the same time. If you actually attack even though you're invisible from the hypercharge, you will still receive the healing from Invisi-heal. And something that makes this hypercharge even better is using his lingering smoke mythic gear. This will just extend the duration of his super and just help him heal up that much more health. Now, Leon is going to be very meta, especially in game modes like Bounty, Wipeout, and Knockout, because he can use his super to sneak up onto the enemies and get some free kills. Obviously, these are going to be the more ideal game modes for Leon, since you need to be getting more kills than dying in these kind of game modes. And of course, what better assassin could you use in this meta besides Leon for those specific scenarios? And another good thing about Leon in these game modes is he has a pretty fast movement speed. So this will just make him even more helpful if he needs to escape the enemies or close down the distance between his target. Now yes, even though you want to be going invisible, sneaking up onto the enemies because that's how he does a lot of damage, even though he's an assassin, he has a pretty long main attack range. And this is realistically what makes Leon even deadlier. He doesn't always have to be at a close range to charge his super, even though he does the most damage at a close range. And also something that will help Leon be even better inside of this meta is his lollipop drop gadget. Because with this gadget, he can just keep himself and his teammates invisible for a short period of time while the gadget is active, and this will just cause the enemies overall to just play very cautiously. Overall, as long as you guys can consistently chain your super, get his hypercharge, I mean, you should have no problem whatsoever dominating the meta with Leon. Alright guys, the next brawler I'm going to talk about is going to be Cordelius. Now, something I do want to go over really quickly is that Cordelius actually did receive a nerf within the recent balance changes, if you didn't know. The nerf that he got was that Cordelius can no longer activate his replanting gadget in the Shadow Realm. So with this said, I actually do recommend actually running with the poison mushroom gadget now, because with the poison mushroom gadget you can actually still use it inside of the Shadow Realm compared to the replanting gadget. So if you're using the poison mushroom gadget, activate the gadget first and then use your super onto the enemy. This way you can use that gadget in the Shadow Realm to help you take down the enemy. Usually you wouldn't be able to use your gadget in the Shadow Realm, but if you activate it before you use your super, then you can actually use it onto the enemy in the Shadow Realm. Now, kind of talking about the Shadow Realm and his super, I mean, that is still going to be the main reason why he's such a good brawler in the meta right now. And something that actually helps him charge his super up even quicker is his combo shroom star power. Because not only will the star power just help you get kills quicker if you're hitting the second mushroom, dealing more damage with the second mushroom will actually help you charge up your super even more. Now, something to keep in mind when using Cordelius' super is that the enemies actually won't be able to use like their gadgets or their supers in the Shadow Realm. This should overall make it a lot easier for you to take down that enemy, so don't be scared to rush them down, especially if the enemy doesn't out DPS you or outrange you. But okay, the main reason why Cordelius has risen to the top of the meta is because of his new hypercharge, Complete Darkness. When activated, Cordelius' super slows enemies down in the Shadow Realm. He also also gains a 24% speed boost, a 25% damage boost, as well as a 5% shield boost. I know it's not as flashy as like BB is hypercharged or Buzz is hypercharged, but it's very simple base, and that's what makes it very strong. Well, there you guys go, a complete list of all the top brawlers in the meta right now for March. I really recommend getting them, maxing them out, going the whole 9 yards because they are so good right now. Well, anyway guys, if you guys enjoyed that video, I highly recommend go check out this video right here.